So 2 weeks ago I made a video saying that something feels off in Delta Force. I described that whenever I have a good game with high KD and score, that in the next match I get higher ping, terrible hit rate, frequently die in one frame or behind cover, and that the matches in general get more and more sweaty. Which is why I'm thinking that the devs are not completely honest with us when talking about SBMM, skill-based matchmaking. And indeed the statements from the developers to this topic are very contradictory. The first one who talked about it was game design director Ricky Liao in an interview with the website Video Gamer in November 2024, so before the actual release of the game. He said that skill-based matchmaking is not only included in the game, but essential for creating a balanced, fun experience. And that the matchmaking in Delta Force isn't super specific like other games, but still groups players based on a number of different factors. Now, a few days after this interview was published and the first negative feedback from the community came in, game director Shadow reacted to this topic again in a Q&A and said that there is a simple distinction between new and experienced players in Delta Force, and that all experienced players are placed within one large matchmaking pool and all new players placed in another one, but that there is no crazy SBMM in place. And he also said that there is no difference between ranked and unranked matches, and that what is called ranked is just an achievement system or a point system, and that it is actually only a translation error, so that there are no actual ranked matches in Delta Force. Fast forward to last week and another Q&A, the devs replied to a question from Enders about the SBMM and said that there is no skill-based matchmaking in the game.
And we want to assure you that there is no real, let's say, skill-based matchmaking in our game.
So within a few weeks we went from skill-based matchmaking is not only included in the game but essential to there is no SBMM. And with all of these statements being so confusing, I thought it's the best to test it myself and see what happens. So I sat down for the last week, played exactly 30 matches of the A&D mode in unranked, because in ranked it would make sense to have an SBMM since it's supposed to be competitive, but in unranked it doesn't. And for every match I wrote down my KD, score per minute, the average ping and FPS I had, and how the match felt in general. Was it sweaty? Did I die behind cover or in one frame? How was the hit rate? And so on. And here's how that went. So before I started into my first match on day 1, I hadn't played for 2 days. And the last 3 matches I had before, I was below my average score per minute, which is around 500, and below my average KD, which is around 1.5. So I'm the most average player you can probably find. But I thought if there is an SBMM, this should positively affect the next match. Cause one hint for an SBMM in a game is that when you underperform, your next match or matches will get significantly easier. And that's exactly what happened. I had a great experience in my first match and also in the first few matches. The ping was stable around 30 milliseconds, the FPS were good, the hit rate was amazing, I had no one frame deaths or dying behind cover at all, and the lobby was not sweaty. Now, to check if this was not just a coincidence, I repeated this halfway through the test and deliberately underperformed with KDs and SPMs far below my average, and the effect was the same. It took the game 1 to 2 matches to adapt, and then lobbies felt a lot easier. The hit rate was great, no one frame deaths or dying behind cover, and the skill level of my teammates as well as my opponents seemed to be a lot lower, down to a point where I actually thought I'm playing against bots, cause suddenly I recognized players that looked like they had a specific movement pattern, but maybe they were just very unexperienced players. I was also able to run around in the open for quite a while without getting shot, and it seemed like enemies actually ignored me, and when they didn't, it still took them quite some time to kill me, so that was very strange. But of course it didn't last for long, cause as soon as I started playing normal again, I easily hit KD ratios of 2.5 to 3 and SPMs of around 700, simply because everything worked well and the lobbies were easier to play. And this lasted for about 1 to 2 matches again before the game started to adapt again. And now I got the same experience that I had already described described in my former video. The hit rate got worse, I started dying more and more behind cover and in one frame. The ping went up from the usual 30 to 50 or 60 and also jumped a lot more during matches. The FPS went down from 200 that I normally have to 150 or even 100. The matchmaking times also got longer and went up to even a few minutes sometimes. The movement started to feel like my soldier has glue on its boots, and I lost more and more gunfights to 1 or 2 missing bullets. It even felt like my mouse input was inconsistent and was sometimes slower and sometimes faster than normal. And in general, the matches got more and more sweaty. So more enemies with mastery and battlefield commander badges, which is the badge you get for reaching the highest rank in the game, so really the best players. I got beamed with laser accuracy even on range, and as soon as I peeked or stood up from behind cover, I got shot. And when I tried to keep up with this, what I did for a while, just for the sake of this test, it got even worse, and at some point it was so exhausting that I felt like I have to fight for my life and I'm not playing a video game anymore. I'm just an average player, like I said before, so at some point I'm at the end of my skill level, and when this happened and the game was still throwing these sweat fests at me, as a result, of course, my KD and SPM went down to around 0.8 and 350 respectively, and every time this happened it caused a shift again, and the next match was less sweaty and the overall experience a lot better. Rinse and repeat. Now, aside from this pattern that I experienced throughout the week, there were also a few more things I tested and noticed. First of all, it seemed like the hit rate and performance already got worse after being on a kill streak at the start of a match, and when my whole team was performing well and we steamrolled the enemy team in the first sectors, we suddenly couldn't get a foothold anymore in the last one, and only when we were at the last 50 tickets it got better again and we finally took the sector. The game also matches you in a way, at least in the A&D mode, so that your attack-defense ratio is always even, because out of 30 matches I played exactly 15 as attacker and 15 as defender. I also played a few matches of ranked this week to see if they feel any different from the unranked lobbies I had last week, but there is indeed no difference between ranked and unranked, so this whole ranking system makes even less sense. There also don't seem to be any welcome back lobbies where you are put into easier lobbies for the first match of your day or after taking a few days of a break. At least when you play every day there doesn't seem to be such thing, but I can't tell you how it is when you're not touching the game for a few weeks. I also tested if you get better lobbies when buying something in the store, because there are other games that are suspected to utilize this, but for Delta Force I can safely say that I did not have any better lobbies after buying a skin bundle. What I recognize though is when you give up on a match because it is too sweaty, you are more likely to get a better lobby in your next match. I did this about 2 weeks ago already and gave up on every other match because they were so exhausting, and then suddenly the next match felt a lot better and I went out with a good KD and SPM. And this even worked when I repeated it several times. But talking about KD and SPM, it also seems like for the matchmaking, neither your win-loss ratio nor your KD matter too much. Because out of the 30 matches I played, I won more than I lost, and I also had matches with good KD, but the next match wasn't a lot sweatier. So the metric that seems to be taken into consideration is actually the SPM, your score per minute. Because whenever I had a match with a high SPM, no matter if we won or not, and no matter if I had low or high KD, the next match was definitely sweatier, which means that even if you are simply good in playing the objective or in reviving and healing your teammates and stack up a lot of points with this, you have a good chance of getting matched into the most sweaty lobbies, even though your KD might not be very high. Now, what does this all mean and what can we take away from this? Well, of course I cannot prove if there is SBMM or any other skill-based matchmaking system in the game and how strong it is. I cannot look into the actual matchmaking process and check what's going on behind the scenes. However, there are quite a few things that speak for an SBMM and also for a stricter SBMM in Delta Force. First of all, the increasingly sweaty lobbies, the higher your SPM. Then the higher ping and longer matchmaking times that especially high-performing players have to face, like Anders has shown in one of his last videos. Also, the sudden drop in KD and SPM when you cannot keep up with with the sweaty lobbies anymore, and the sudden spike in performance and the less sweaty lobbies when you deliberately underperform. Of course, Delta Force still has different lobbies than Call of Duty, for example, and the SBMM, if there is one, is definitely not as strong. But it seems like there is more to this topic than the developers give away. And one question that still remains is, where does the bad hit rate, the one-frame deaths, the frame drops and the ping jumps come from? Are these mechanics built into the game to manipulate the outcome of matches and player performance, or, and I think that's more likely, is this the result of lobbies made with SBMM? Because SBMM is a system that groups players of similar skill level into the same match. Even though for Delta Force the skill range for one lobby might be wider than in Call of Duty. But this often means that players from several regions are matched together because they have the same skill level. So there might be players with 30, 50, 150 or even 300 ping playing in one match. And this mix of regions can lead to the terrible hit rate, server performance, one-frame deaths and so on that a lot of us are experiencing in Delta Force. And of course it would also explain the higher ping and longer matchmaking times. And this effect combined with a possible bad netcode and possible bad servers may result in this gameplay experience. Now, I still give the devs the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there is no bad intent behind this. Maybe the game really just has a terrible netcode and bad servers and they're actively working on improving this. Maybe there is no strict SBMM and no manipulation of the matches, but it feels like there is. And this experience, combined with the contradictory statements of the devs, this is what drives players away from the game. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to destroy lobbies or whatever some people come up with in the comments of my videos. I don't even have the skill for this. I'm alright with SBMM in games as well, even though I think it should only be in ranked lobbies but not in unranked. But it needs to be well balanced, and it should not feel like a punishment for having one good game. Matches should feel consistent in terms of hit rate, ping and FPS, and it should definitely not feel like my game is being rigged or manipulated. Thanks for watching.